Hey, homies, homettes, homers, whoever's out there. It's me, Ryan Wynn. I'm here with Late Night Inks. It's very late. It's not very inky yet, but it is very night. So we're going to give people a couple minutes, see if they want to show up. This is my first time at the inking desk in a few days. It is very hot here. I've been whining about that all day on Twitter. First world California problems. And thank you, any who have joined. I see we got a couple people there. I'm going to go ahead and run the intro and tweet out that I'm live.
Give us any chance, we'll take it. Read us any rules, we'll break it. We're gonna make our dreams come true. Doing it our way. Nothing's gonna hold us back now. Straight ahead and on the track now. Gonna make our dreams come true. Doing it our way.
That was kind of weird. Did the music fluctuate for you guys? It seemed to be going fast and slow and fast and slow. I'm running this from the phone tonight, from the mobile unit, so it's a little different. My comic ship setup. Hey, we got Charles Petrie in the house. See, now I'm never gonna remember the right way to say it. I think you said it was Petrie. I believe so. But I know I'm gonna screw that up forever. All right, I am loading up my brush with ink. I'm just gonna be working on some warm-ups here. I need to get back into the flow, and I didn't want to let another week go by without doing Wednesday night late night inks. We got Ty Ranger in the house. What is up, guys? It's hard for me to highlight questions and scroll through the chat on the phone, so I'll do my best. All right, what is up, dudes? What time zones are you guys in? I don't want to ask, I'm not going to ask any revealing questions, but how late is late where you guys are? Here it is 11:23. I'm in the Pacific time zone. And what we're working with tonight, we are on Strathmore 300. Bristol, which I used to hate, and in the last few years they have made major improvements on it. I'm going to be testing out the difference between the front and the back, because the back is not supposed to be treated the same as the front, and I haven't experimented that much with this board, so I want to see, but we're going to be playing on the front. This is the treated side right now. We are inking with a Raphael 8404. Her name is Stinger. She's a size 2. She is very sharp. She'll cut ya. And we are using Rapidograph Universal. Or sorry, not the Universal. We're using the Ultra Draw. And I do have some other inks coming on the way. I'm going to be doing some testing of some various inks. But I like the brush flow of this one on this paper, and it doesn't lift much when erased. You'll let it dry overnight, especially. I also age my ink so that it becomes a little darker, a little thicker than how the manufacturer sends it to me. That's just by putting it in an actual ink well and then leaving the cap loose for a while on various days, and then either adding water or fresh ink as I see fit. Let's see, we got the New York time zone for Charles. So Tommy says, good morning, 9:30 a.m. in Finland. What's up? Or is it Tommy? Tommy? I like, that's a good name. I like it. Ty Ranger, same as yours. And, well, a certain legend of multiple comic companies calls me Petri. Ty Ranger says, LOL sounds like when I changed my screen name. Petrie. There we go. I'm gonna remember it, but it's one of those things. That kind of stuff always happens to me when I get something wrong, and then I get it corrected. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, I'll remember that. And then forever, I go the opposite. It's part of being a dummy. All right, so I am warming up here on the board with some diamond lines. I'm whipping my wrist. My elbow's locked in place. Diamond lines are kind of what it sounds like. It's a diamond shape. Thin to thick to thin. And that's just a nice way to warm the brush up while you're warming your wrist up. You can go thick to thin to thick too. A little bounce on those lines with some bloops on the end, as we call them. And we can go a little smoother on those too, where we're almost doing diamond lines that are joined, where we don't pick up. But anyways, I'm gonna get a little more water on here. Since we're just warming up, I like to see how the brush reacts kind of organically with stuff on it too sometimes. So we're going to be doing almost like a little bit of ink wash here. Although I think on camera it just looks like dark lines. Well, thank you for joining, gang. Like I said, or if you didn't hear earlier, if you weren't here, I'm doing this on my phone, and the clamp that I use for my phone makes it kind of difficult to scroll through the chat. So if I miss something, just bear with. Or if it's something important, hit me up on Twitter or whatever if I miss an important question. Oh, hey, looks like I got a cat announcing that he has entered the room. That would not be the orange stupid cat that you guys see at the end of some of my videos. That would be Franklin Delano Beans, Frankie Beans. And it is funny that I got a friend named Frankie B and a cat named Frankie Beans. Frankie B does not, or Frankie Beans does not draw anywhere near as good as Frankie B. I gotta get Frankie B on the comic ship. And that's what I gotta do. We're gonna do that in September. Coming up, those of you that do watch the comic ship, coming up next week we have Global Frequency. And the week after that we have Nandor Fox. And the week after that we have Lucifer Storm. And then we might be taking the 5th week in August off because there's 5 Mondays in August. Let's see my patterns I have fun creating here. And I can't believe how fast this year is going. Missed a lot of late night ink Wednesdays, and I hate doing that. I still want to get back into a regular schedule, but like throwing some little curveballs. Nothing big, just little curveballs. Nothing one can't handle. Not worth complaining about, but worth noting. All right, now I've kind of tilted the brush down, so it's, earlier I was holding it straight up for those diamond lines, nice and clean like that. Now I've tilted it back on my hand, as you can see. I've dropped it it was in between these two knuckles for most of that, or even closer up on that knuckle. So I've dropped it back down to this knuckle, and that's going to give you a different brush shape. And what tends to happen there is you get almost like a flat side and then a side that's breaking or pushing down. So you can get like textures like that. That's not totally flat on that side, but that's how it is. So if you work with digital brushes too, if you ever want to manipulate your brushes, say you're working in Procreate You click on the brush and it gives you a place to do a demo of what you're working, the brush you're working with. So you lay down a bunch of lines, and at first, if you say you do some bouncy lines, they will be centered with the sort of like that. The thick and thins will be centered. So do a set of lines like that, and then go into the pencil settings and adjust the tilt. The tilt is on an XY axis like this in the settings, and it has an arch like that, like a semicircle or a quarter circle like that. And it's got a bar here, and you toggle that up or down to adjust. And as you do, it's exactly like tilting the brush like that. So you can, take it all the way, excuse me, all the way to very extreme like this. And this is often good for using for doing background textures like cloud layers, or even ground and trees and mountain textures in the background. If you hold the brush at a different angle, but it's still tilted, you bring it up like this, it's tilted kind of that angle, but away from me. That's when you can do these sort of almost teardrop-like shapes, and those tend to work really well when you're doing water. You do like little ripply effects. It's kind of sloppy. I'm just showing you the brush techniques. Don't judge me too harshly. Let's see, we got some new comments. Let's see if I can catch up. Hey, Daniel Ferreira, what is up? Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. Daniel is a creator and a musician that is a longtime friend of the channel, a friend of Alterna. 7:30 a.m. where he is. Well, good morning to you, Daniel. We got Colin Swinburne in the house. What is up? I'm putting together my plastic crack while you do your thing. Now, let's see, plastic crack. Is that something to do with like his RPG game setup that he's been doing? Nandor was just on with page one. Yeah, Nandor Fox is he's a cool guy. He was on our channel a while ago. I really like him. He's a very inspiring young creator. He's very intelligent. I like that about him. And I think we're gonna have some a funny sketch. Well, I know we're gonna have a funny sketch idea, or a funny sketch the episode he's on. So stay tuned for that. El Gargoyle, bring in the heat. What is up, El Gargoyle? Hey, Argelenian in the house too. What is up? All right, let's get back to doing some pretty ink line warm-ups. So this is actually my favorite thing to do, is just sit here and ink lines with no purpose. If somehow I could get paid for that. Hey, cat. Whatever. Yeah, I see you. I see you. But yeah, just sitting there doing stuff like this. Just fill up page after page. I've talked about it on here before, and I often think about it that like I need to figure out some kind of abstract art style or something that'll utilize my enjoyment of this, but maybe make it something that's worthwhile as a final product. If you've been fearful of using a brush, you should be. When I said this one's sharp, they're real sharp. They'll cut you. No, they can be difficult. It's funny, I've been using them since I was young, so I'm very comfortable with them. So when I was young and cocky in my 20s, it was one of those things when I'd hear an older artist say, oh, the brush is so difficult. I'd be like, brush is easy, man. You're just scared of it. But in all honesty, it's a very intimidating tool. If your first one isn't a decent brush, that can really throw you off. because you don't want to blame your tools or whatever. But a bunk brush, a janky brush, will just ruin everything, and there's no way to learn with one. So you do need to find like a good Winsor Newton or a good Raphael, and you need to just understand that it takes a lot of time and patience and practice. And instead of thinking about stuff like inking muscles and pouches and guns and stuff, you gotta start thinking of everything in simple forms of straight line, curved lines, thick to thin to thick. And that's kind of what I like about doing these warm up or practice pieces, is it becomes a meditation on that, or it just becomes a meditation. It's not on anything. I'm talking to you guys, but if I wasn't, I would be sitting here quietly, and my head would be going thin to thick to thin, 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 chisel blunt, whatever line I'm making, I'm kind of thinking that in my head. I think that's kind of where the crafty escapism comes in. Because inking is more, it's more craft than art. The art side is kind of done with the pencil. That's the creative part. The creating is done with that. The idea is laid forth. And this is not taking away from inking. This is, to me, it's more respecting just what inking really is. Inking is the alchemical part of the, if you want to look at art as like a magic process. Don't worry, I'm not gonna get all magic weirdo here. I don't know, I might. But if you want to look at it like that, you're creating something from nothing. You have your framework for creation here, where things are locked in. You control what happens here. Your something from nothing is your idea. It's your light bulb, and then your pencil to paper. And then you get rid of that idea. You lay down the ink line, and that's the alchemical process. You've taken in what it is, and you break it down and rebuild it with ink, and then you take your eraser and destroy the original idea, the pencil lines underneath. So to me, I've always thought of inking as a craft. I shouldn't say always. I used to call it an art form. I think I was young and I was trying to elevate what it was, and I didn't realize that I wasn't elevating it. I was just mislabeling and not respecting craft versus art. Like I saw that there was like, oh, some weird difference because of the phrasing. This is kind of a fun pattern. Kind of like what I got going on here. Hey, Rex Doom here. Ryan is gonna go Alan Moore on us. We start talking about Tree of Life and stuff like that. Colin says, in your opinion, who are some of the best colorists to study work of? It depends what you're going for. If you want to start simple, my all-time favorite is Glennis Oliver. She also went by Glennis Ween when she was married to Glenn Ween. Len Ween? I'm drawing a blank right now. Yeah, Len Ween. Yeah, Glennis Oliver. She was a big-time 80s Marvel colorist. So she was dealing with a very limited palette, but pulled off stuff that is just perfect color theory. Really just pleasing to the eye, poppy, fun, cool. Petra Scottis is another one from that era. Modern people, my favorites are luckily people I became friends with, some of the few people in the industry that were worth being friends with. David Barron, look up anything he's colored. He has been working in the industry since he was 15, and he's been studying color theory since then, and I always like to learn from him, but then he'll go into stuff, and I'm like, oh man, I don't understand even the words he's using. He's so advanced. But that being said, his work, even though it's modern and it looks very modern with the cuts and the grads and the shading and everything he does, it's based on and inspired by classic comics. So he's using a similar palette and a similar amount of like white and stuff, which is quite a big deal, understanding how to use, how much white to use in your comic pages. Let's see who else. Dave Stewart is amazing. Obviously, there's some great indie colorists around as well. You know, if you're just looking on Twitter in the indie scene, there's like INKS, who I think is I'm so impressed with InkSpot's colors. I don't speak highly of a lot of people's colors because I think 90% of colors out there are just okay. So I'd rather not say anything. So the few people I do speak about, I really, really like, really honestly love their work and look to their work for inspiration. Let me see. I'm always so dumb about these kind of questions. It's always like an hour later, I'm like, oh, here's that whole, I got a whole list of answers now. So I'm gonna stew on that question for a few minutes too, see if I got more names to think of. Oh, people I knew that I forgot to name. Jean-Francois Bellieu. He was the Death Betty colorist, so you'll be getting some of the stuff from him, but he's another one that highly advanced knowledge of color theory, but his colors look very simple, and it's actually kind of easy to learn from because you're like, oh, he's using purple here in the shadows and orange for the lighting, and where it's, you know, or blue in the shadows and yellow for the lighting and stuff like that. So it's just like with David, it's deceptively simple, but it will get you on the right path for like what colors to use. And I see that so much with indie creators. And I always tell them, I say, take your page, whether it's for pencils, inks, or colors, and put it next to the comic that you are inspired by or something that's kind of similar to what you're shooting for. And look at the saturation of the colors. Look at how much white is on the page. Look at how much, how many colors above 50%. You know, you want to have a certain amount. You don't want everything too dark, because you can portray night and dark scenes in comic books without actually using colors that are that dark. Man, this brush is flowing so good right now. She's like, why ain't you let me play lately, Papa? Sorry, kid. I've been busy. All right, just making more patterns here. It's not really going to make anything. It's just, I don't know, fun patterns. All right, checking out comments here. Let's see. Sounds French. Ryan Wynn, is it me or did that sheet look like desert dunes? Desert dunes. I don't know which part would look like desert. These pieces I was doing here, like that. I don't know when that question was. It might have been a while ago. Colin says, thanks for that, because I've got the page from Jeff that I'm going to play with, because my coloring goes as far as 12 color pencils and basic coloring books. You know, think of it like that. That's how Dave Swartz colors. I mean, again, Dave's got advanced color theory, but if you look at his work, you know, you'll be able to, it's easy to dissect. It doesn't mean it's easy to copy, but you can look at his work and see what he's doing with places in light and places in shadow. And Dave plays a lot with putting warm in his cools and cools in his warms, but all his colors are there, especially his live stream drawings, where he's coloring them with colored pencil and markers and stuff like that, and you can actually just see each line, like what he's doing. Yeah, check out Dave Swartz and check out his stuff on Feast or Famine. He's another guy that I put his colors up with anyone at the big two or any company. Dave Swartz is top of the line, and even though a lot of us say that and agree with it, I don't think a lot of people really know how good that guy is. And now his pencils and inks are starting to catch up. They weren't there before, and I'm not talking trash. Dave's my homie, and he would agree. His pencils and inks were fun and they were good, but they weren't at the level of his coloring. And he's close. His Confederate Monster stuff is so solid, and his stuff's just getting better and better. So he's one of those creators that I think is just gonna keep getting better and better. But I like to think that about all of us and all the creators I surround myself with. Somebody I'm scared to see get better is Jeff Elkins. Jeff's on like his third comic now, I think. But City of Rot was his first one, and I would have guessed that he had been drawing comics for 15 years if I didn't know better. All right, let's see. Oh, I'm dropping templates on the floor. Hold on. All right, I'm gonna take an inking break. Thought I'd show you guys some character designs I'm working on. So I have shown a couple of these, or one of these on Twitter or whatever, but I'm working on these pages right now. Let me see. No, this isn't anything. What is this? Oh, this is my sketches. This is when I warm up and just anything that's going by on YouTube or TV or movie, whatever, kind of like somebody's face or an angle or something. I really like this dude. I like the way that came out. This guy's kind of funny too. That's kind of how I warm up. But I got these character designs, and I'm calling this guy, for now, he's Admiral Warlock, and he's a new character. He wasn't in the original Hammerella story when I ended up extending it a couple months ago. He was in my notes, but he wasn't going to be in the story. Like all the stuff that surrounded his part of the story was just going to be kind of mentioned in a couple paragraphs. And then when I started extending it, I started seeing that he needed to be kind of a major part, but not a major. He's an admiral. So he is someone that was a former pirate. He's slightly inspired by Harlock, inspired by a lot of other people though, but name and style a little there. And he's part of a peace force now, and he's a protector. So he has something that symbolizes the eye patch. I was all ready to get to work on his pages, and these were the designs. This is him yelling, just getting different angles, and then I realized I wanted to change up the shapes. So I'm going through a redesign here, like a stockier, wider head, way bigger mustache, much wider mouth, smaller nose, almost like Ben Grimm proportions, but not quite as extreme. Whereas these are kind of realistic, normal guy. And I was kind of almost bored with it. Like he had the shapes and the ideas. I like the mustache shape and the beard shape and the eye patch shape and the bald head. So essentially on paper to say it was right, but then it wasn't. And then I realized that he needed to be more Pauly Senior from whatever that Orange County bike show. The biker dude. So I don't know if I'm going to look at him for inspiration, but more bulldogish, I guess, in the face. So I'm really excited about this character. He's I don't know, he's very much inspired by a lot of anime stuff, and he's going to be a major player in the final battle. I'm looking forward to that. But I think I'm going to work on a commission now for a few minutes before we go. How long have we been going? We've only been going for a half hour. I got another 30 minutes we can go. Let's see. I'm going to here. You know what? Let me go off cam and hold the phone so I can scroll and see your questions really quick. Rex Doom says Monopoly guy on steroids. That's that's one of the inspirations. Yeah, the monocle. I don't want to get into what the monocle patch is right now. Charles says he's in the Navy. Yes, he was, and he still carries that title. The same as the Naval Flight Squad, Blue Astra, that we have, the sort of Gatchaman kind of Silverhawks team that we have in the book. They have been wrongfully accused of a crime on their home planet, and they were forced to leave, but they have so much respect for their planet and or for their home world and for their positions in the military there and what they've done and their service that they hope to be able to return one day. They hope to be proven innocent and return one day. And meanwhile, they go around the galaxy performing and being hired as smugglers and things like that, but they maintain their titles. So like Major RBT1 is one of my new favorite characters from the group. I'm so stoked for the things that go on with him in the Hammerella story and the ideas I have for him going forward in future stories. Daniel Ferreira says to tie Ranger Red Koi right. I like the colors and the way those comics portray the world. Haters gonna hate, but I like them. Yes, that's another colorist we know that is top of the line is Nick Welch. He's somebody who hasn't done many comics, but he's got this amazing education, and the look of his work is of someone that's extremely experienced. You would think he'd been coloring comics for years. Colin says he wants his face on a t-shirt. Hey, maybe I can make something like that work, especially for you, Colin. Ty Ranger says, very cool. I get vibes of steampunk with the original. Yeah, it's funny. I always get that in a lot of my designs throughout the years, and I've never actually looked at a lot of steampunk for inspiration, but it's obviously crept in. I like and appreciate much about it, but I've never really been into it as a genre. But I haven't avoided it. It's just something I didn't really get into, but there's always elements in my designs. Major RBT1 Indiegogo win. That's maybe there would be something like that down the line, but for now his stories are all tied to Hammerella and the Blue Astra team. So I do have new thoughts on what I'm gonna do, but I have to kind of pitch them to Peter. So Daniel says, I'm excited for Hammerella. Just hearing you, Mr. Wynn. Yeah, the new end fight scene, like, it's 20 more pages for a fight scene than the 7 or 8 that it was going to be in the original 50-page story. It's super intricate. There's tons of how do I say this right? There's a lot. I shouldn't say there's tons. There's a lot of tactics involved. Because originally Blue Astra was just going to be part of getting Hammerella from point A to point B in the story, and instead they became part of the big story. So instead of having one person fighting all the bad guys at the end, we now have this whole team thing happening. And that was one of the things that really set me back in the writing, where I paced out the story and was like, okay, I got this many pages, it'll take this many days. And then when I started getting into those stories, it was it was slowing me down, because all of a sudden I had to have these battle tactics, because there has to be a reason. when I wrote Gods and Gears, every action scene and the final fight, every action the characters take or make reflects their personality and their story as best as it can. Um, so there's ups and downs. People make certain mistakes. If there's somebody cocky, you want to play that into the fight scene. If there's somebody lucky, you want to play that into the action. Things like that. So I had to take all that into consideration, and then I had to take into consideration that these are four formal or former warriors that would have done and seen plenty of battle, and um, they would have tactics, they would have moves. And then when I introduced Admiral Warlock, he's not part of their navy, but he is former navy and former pirate. So he knows tons of battle tactics, and he's sort of a senior figure to them. So um, are they? I'm not going to tell you everything, but are they going to work well together? Will he understand Blue Astra's techniques in fighting the bad guys, or will he will he be a purple-haired weirdo like what's her name in that one Star Wars movie? No, there won't be any of that. Rex Doom is off. Good night, Rex. Take care of yourself, buddy. Eric Housel says looking forward to it. Yeah, and what other news? These are things I sent out in last week's update. I'm going to do another update either tonight or tomorrow morning. But the news on Hammerella, if some of you didn't hear, is a friend of the channel and friend of Alterna, Ben Soto, who has a Halloween project anthology on Indiegogo right now. Ben has come on board to the Hammerella team and is going to be my flatter and color assistant, but not flatterer. I asked him if he would compliment me, and he will not, even if I'm paying him, but he will accept money to work on the colors. So he will be doing the flats, which for those of you that don't know, that means taking the ink files and creating a layer underneath them in a digital app, and then going in and creating sections or selecting areas, say the face, the hair, everything that's an element in the piece of art and the drawing in the panel, they select and give it a color. And that saves me, hours on just literally just saves me so much time. So I can pencil and ink the page, send it to Ben. He can do the flats, and then I can go in and drop the colors I want to use into those flats and do my highlights and stuff. And that has already freed up my mind so much. Just having someone with his speed and skill, because he's I would say he's almost a better colorist than I am. He's a nice guy and would argue that, and I want to sound a little cocky and not, completely give in that he's a better colorist, but damn, he's a good colorist. Let's see. Daniel says, Jesus, that sounds awesome. When cool. D Hausner, oh man, I can't wait. Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm super excited about it. And I've done enough in my time with music and art where I don't always, I definitely don't always get it right, but there's certain things when I feel a vibe about it, and I'm like, this is going to be the thing that sticks with people. And there's so many cool moments like that in this final scene. But we'll see. Everything resonates differently with people. It was funny in Gods and Gears. There were moments like that where I was like, oh, this is going to be something that I think resonates with people. And it would, but then there would be other things that were more subtle that I didn't think people would care that much about, that they would pick up on. Or maybe they read more into it than I implied. But that's one of the great things about, story and reading someone else's story, is how it kind of becomes yours. I think that's something that's not, I don't know if that's not discussed enough. I don't hear it discussed in a respectful way. There's always someone like, oh, you read the book and you think the book's yours now? Tell the writer what to do, this and that. But there is something to that. There is something to, if you create a song and somebody taps their foot to it, um, they've completed the circuit in a way. That's kind of how I see it. If I'm the A part, they're the B part. And then that completes the circuit. That turns the light on. That creates the fire. Um, it's the same thing with movies and books and everything. Um, that's why when I'm giving advice to creators, I'll often ask them, "Is this for you or is this for other people?" Um, because if you're creating something that's just for you, then almost whatever you're doing is perfect. You know. But then there's things if you are trying to attract a mass audience, then there's certain things that mass audience is used to uh, certain color palettes or certain panel counts or all that stuff has to start being taken into consideration, and that does take away from the art feel of it because then it starts to feel like you're crafting a product. um, but that's the balance that you kind of have to find with this stuff. um, is how much do you want to try to push your own thing, versus how comfortable do you want to make it, or familiar for people. um, and that used to always throw me, it still kind of throws me off because you want to be unique and creative. And when I started writing Gods and Gears, the first issue, which I still think is pretty rough, I think the second issue I think is light years beyond. I'm very happy with that. And you guys know I'm always honest about that. I don't think the first issue is bad, but now that I understand not only the characters but how to craft comic books or a comic book story better, um, I just see it. I'm like, oh, I know what I could have done. How I could have made that better. Um, so going forward, everything's a little smoother. Like I'm really excited for issues 5 through 8. Um, I did just lose my train of thought that I was doing because I realized I'm not inking. Just sitting here yammering away. Flatterer is my job anyways, says Ty Ranger. Daniel Ferrara says, great art is always up for interpretation. Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Art versus, art for the public versus art for yourself. And that's why I always ask, because a lot of people, believe it or not, a lot of people just like creating. They enjoy the art and the craft of it, and they don't want to. They're not trying to make it at the big two or anything like that. Maybe they want to do a small indie comic or something like that. Um, and I'm always so stoked to see people just being creative in any sense. And that's what the ink-alongs here on Late Night Inks are for. It's not about how badass of an inker are you, because you're never going to be as badass as me. So whatever. No, I'm just kidding. But it's not about that. It's about getting yourself to loosen up and have fun with something that is a fun craft like inking, especially when the drawing's provided for you and all you have to do is trace over the lines. And if you're not doing it for publication or to try to sell, you can just kind of get lost in creating it. And it doesn't matter if your lines are a little shaky. It doesn't matter if they meet up right or if they're too thick here, too thin there. Hey, we got Justin Holton stopping in. Hey, Justin, how you doing, buddy? Justin Holton, somebody we'll probably get him on at some point. He's a very very talented, very studious artist. And I want to get somebody like him on the channel to sort of talk about how to learn, because he's really good at sort of learning. That's a big thing, is how to soak up lessons and how to put them into your own practice. That's why I do a lot of these warm-ups on the boards, and I do those before a lot of the ink-alongs and things like that. And I encourage you guys to do those too, because it's and I know I'm repeating myself to a lot of you, but it's muscle memory for your brain. It's like I liken it to when you go to a professional basketball game. You see they start with their layups. Here, hold on. I'll go camera here for a second. They'll start with layups and small shots, and then they'll work up to 3-pointers and free throw line and long shots and things like that. I'm gonna start inking again in a sec for a little bit. Let's get the camera lined up. And you want to do the same thing. You want to warm up before the game. And I couldn't ever just break out a piece and I mean I could, but I don't like to. I want to be warmed up, and I want to treat it right. Where did my brush go? It's behind my ear. Full classic old man move. Ty Ranger says it can get a little frustrating trying to learn sometimes. There are no rules, but there sure are guidelines that some really think you should follow. Oh well, that's why it's learning. LOL. Yeah, and I'm one of those people. I've got guidelines, and that's why I ask people that question too, because the guidelines don't matter if you're just trying to learn for yourself and be creative for yourself. But then if you are trying to sell to the public and stuff, there's certain things that you gotta do right. That's why stuff like punctuation is super important. I bitch at all my friends about commas and quotation marks in their stuff, because I'm not naturally all that great at grammar. But I strive to have that really worked out well on my pages. Let's see. I'll ink this backpack. And the reason for that is there are so many people that if you have bad punctuation, they do not even want to read your book. And I want my book to sell to everybody. I want people to look at it and be like, hey, I can comfortably read this book, because that's another reason that lettering is way more important than people realize, and often think they can do it themselves. Is it's just words and balloons, right? But it's got to be so clear. You can't make it uncomfortable for the reader at all. They almost have to forget they're reading. And I used to always want to do stuff different. I don't want to do just like everybody else. That was my biggest problem for so many years in my 20s, is this looks so standard. Or even when I started writing in my 30s, writing exposition, it seems so cheesy. I was like, this is so cheesy. I don't want to have somebody explain something. But when you're going for mass audience and mass understanding, there's guidelines that work. They're not rules you have to follow, but they're things that work. And that's where I kind of had to learn to okay, let go of I have to be so unique or something. And then lo and behold, I feel that Gods and Gears is actually more unique than my original story idea. Once I started, kind of following the rules, things started working better. So that's something I'm working on in life too. We've talked about that many times on here. A lot of us didn't think we'd ever make it to 40 or beyond. So preparing for 40 or beyond didn't even seem like a thing. You're like, yeah, well, it's I'm not gonna be there when I'm 40. Why would I plan ahead? I never thought I'd be in my 40s creating a cosmic comic book universe with Dean Kotz. We don't sell 100,000. We don't sell tens of thousands of copies. We sell a couple thousand copies. and we have fun doing it. But I didn't plan for that, so it's all new. Like I kind of wanted my dream plan was be an inker, work up to penciler, and then work up to editor at one of the big companies. Because when I was young, one of the things I really liked was stories of guys like Neil Adams, who fought the corporations for artist rights and things like that. And I was hoping that basically I kind of wanted to work my way in and then try to make things better for artists, and not by causing a storm or doing being a jerk or causing a scene, but getting in there and showing that contracting an artist, like how the product can be better and the artists are treated better, and the product being better will sell better. If things sell better, we all get to have more fun. And the security, there's something to securing your artists, and there's zero security in the mainstream. That's and there hasn't been for a long time. I bailed years ago, and I came back for Valiant because I felt like they were still kind of indie, and they had promised contracts. Didn't see that through. They didn't live up to that, but that's what I wanted. I wanted contracts, because nobody wants to give inkers contracts, because then if the penciler's late, which the penciler will be because the editor will not manage the penciler or the project correctly, then they would still have to pay you, even if they had to get another inker to come in and help on the deadline. So they never want to give you a contract. And that's BS, because then that's what happens is you secure the time to complete the project and be professional. And then the penciler, who I would honestly say 7 out of 10 times you're not dealing with a very professional person with a penciler. And I'm talking high level people too. You'd be so surprised. Or maybe you wouldn't be. So you've secured the time and you're expecting X amount of money for this project. And then the penciler's late, and then they take the pages away and they won't have stuff to make up for it. And you're out that money and out that time. And so you're always having to seriously hustle. I mean, my hustle game used to be strong. It's funny now, I don't want to work for any company. I want to have Alternate as my publisher, and Pete kind of helps me out a little bit editorially, just to make sure that what I want to be portraying is what's being portrayed. What we're trying to sell is what we're selling. And because he's got a stake in the game too as publisher, but lets us run the creative train. So I don't ever want to work for an editor or publisher again. I have a coloring gig I'm doing this year for a small publisher. Once I'm done with Hammerella, that's going to be curious, but I think it's going to be a fairly simple procedure. So, but it's one of the few companies I didn't even realize this person had a company, but there's somebody I really, really like in the film world. And I'm going to be super, super stoked to be able to announce that to you guys. But I can't do that yet. All right, we're going to go for a few more minutes. I'm going to catch up on questions. We still got a few people watching. So this is my Vietnam soldier. Got shot in the arm the day before. He's taking a break today, but he's still got his gun and his pack with him. All right, let's take it to the questions here. Then we'll call it a night. If you have questions for me, inking questions, Hammerella questions, Gods and Gears, any questions, now is the time to ask them. I will be scrolling here and catching up. Let's see. Colin says, I just want to make mine. So he just wants to make his comics. I think that's what he's talking about. Might have scrolled back too far. Daniel says it's always has to be fun too. You never want to turn a passion into a chore. That's a good point too. Um, I've seen a lot of people use that. A lot of young creatives. Cousin of mine, especially, comes to mind because I was talking to him this weekend about it. When he was young, he liked cooking so much, but then he was like, "Well, I don't want to make it my job because I don't want to end up, not like I don't want to dislike cooking." And this guy, he really likes cooking and he's really good. And I was like, "All right, but you might, it might be something you regret because you can always go for it, because he wasn't going for anything else at the time." But then he ended up kind of falling back into it. So he became a manager for a small chain of really good restaurants called Lazy Dog. And they moved him up to a place and then up north to one of their shops. And then a local steakhouse, a high end steakhouse, hired him. And now he's um, working there and learning there. And now he's back into wanting to have his own restaurant, basically. Sorry, I'm slamming my Cokes over here. Coca-Cola, that is. Hey, Simonin7 says, hi, Ryan. Hello, everyone. What is up, Simonin? If you're still here, it's good to see you, buddy. Boy, this chat just scrolled on me like crazy. Let's see, scrolling here. Everyone's saying hi to Simonin. Ty Ranger says, don't they know the internet has killed grammar and punctuation? I guess so. Charles says, Alan Iverson for anyone who cares. Mass audience? Isn't that church? Mass audience. And also with you. Simonin says, working all digital can be bad for lettering. I've seen some examples of lettering very tiny on print that looks good on the PDF or similar. Yes, and that is usually somebody's inexperience with dealing with print. Yeah, I've seen that quite a few times. Sometimes it can be the opposite too, where it's too big. Lettering's much larger than it needs to be. But boy, I'd rather have larger lettering. Because big lettering, it almost leans it into like a storybook kind of quality. But small lettering, just that doesn't get you anywhere. And I've seen Marvel and DC books where they went really tiny on the font because they didn't edit the words and they were trying to fit the words, so they just made the font smaller. And I don't mean throughout the book, I mean on a page or on a panel. They would just make it smaller in that one panel. And if that doesn't scream inexperience of editors, I don't know what does. Daniel says, follow rules, but don't give up on the dream. Yeah, exactly. Make sure you're fed and your family's fed too. You don't want to be that person. Like I knew so many comedians in LA years ago, and they were so in their own mind, they were so devoted to the craft of comedy, whether it was stand up or sketch, that they didn't want to have a job. They would live in their cars, things like that. And I just thought it was weird because our career paths and choices and risks, me being an artist and inker, were similar. And I knew a lot of inkers and artists and creators that they wouldn't get a day job because they want to stay so focused on it. But boy, that led to seemed like a lot more trouble for them than it was worth. I went the route of doing a day job, but then still devoting as many hours and as much time as I could to my craft, my personal art, my comic booking, my painting, and stuff like that. There were times when I was working at Quicksilver and I'd come in very tired, and my boss would ask me why I was tired. And this was, I'm 22, so I'm dumb, and I was higher up at a job than I should have been. But he said, "Why are you so tired?" you're out of it. And I was like, oh, I'm working hard to be a comic book artist, so I'm doing this stuff at night. And he was like, why would you even tell me that? And I was, in my head, it was just like, I don't know. It's just like what I was doing. I'm 22. I'm stupid. No offense. Well, maybe a little offense to all my 22-year-old homies out there. But I was a dumb 22-year-old. And he's like, "Don't tell me that." He's like, I don't, if you're going to be doing that, you need to come in here without me knowing that. I don't need to have excuses for why you are tired or why you're not doing, the job right. You're not performing at a certain level. And like, it's a big wake up call for me on how to balance that stuff, and especially how to show respect, because that was something I saw too, was a lot of young creators like being bad at their job, whether it was at Quicksilver or whether it was one of my retail jobs, like at the art store I worked at, art stores I worked at, where they were like, "Well, I'm too good for this. This isn't where I'm I'm not going to land here." And a lot of actors and comedians were like this too, where they were too good for their job. And I guess I was super lucky. My grandpa and my first mentor that I met in my early 20s, Billy Brackage, and my cousins and stuff, like the people I was inspired by as a young guy, it was always about like, no matter what you're doing, do it the best you can. If you hate your job, you should not be doing it poorly, because that is you practicing doing stuff half-ass. And no matter what, you should always try to do everything right. You should always try to do the best you can. If you hate something that much, then you leave. Or you don't want to get stuck in that mentality. And I saw young creators doing that, and they were too good to be nice to somebody to register, because like, what, I'm not going to be a clerk my whole life like that. And it was just like, oh, you were setting up some bad practice, like some bad human practice. um, and that takes us back to practicing good practice, like we started off the episode, um, with practice. Daniel says, the reason I love hearing Mr. Wynn and Mr. Samedi talk about their passions is that you can always learn. You would be amazed about the parallels between their passions and mine. Yeah, I that's it doesn't matter what creative task you're into. Most of the stuff I talk about, it applies to that. Simon says, early 2000s Valiant was very promising. Charles says, EXO was damn good. Yeah, it was. I didn't think I would like Hammerella. I'm reading the quotes. Sorry, that was the next one. I didn't think I would like EXO. He wasn't my favorite of the old ones. I liked a lot of the art, but I didn't really love the story. I liked the idea, but then I don't know. I think all the stuff 2010 to 2018 Valiant was actually really, really good. Hammerella and let's see. Who would you like to cross over with? Hammerella and we actually do have a crossover in the works. I guess I can say a little bit about it. John Hervey and I have a crossover. The script is written. The artist has been chosen. I think we have a couple more steps to go over on the script to tighten it and edit it. And then we'll probably have some official announcements. It's the dream of many to do what they love for a living. Yes, it is. And that's why it's a funny balance sometimes, where someone like my cousin said that's what I was getting to about that, where my cousin said he didn't want to, and that was actually his fear of success, or his fear of failure. He didn't want to reach out and try to do his dream and fail at it, where if he just did it at home, he wouldn't fail. And he was talking about that he regretted not choosing that sooner, but then I was like, but look, your path shows you to come back here, and you're coming at it with so much education, having worked at these restaurants for years and working your way up the management. Now you know tons of stuff about how to manage a restaurant, which a lot of chefs don't. So you have this business side, and you always got to find the flip side of stuff. So especially when you want to live no regrets. So if you feel a regret, you're like, how do I not regret this? That was a weird reaction, in my opinion. Would he have preferred you say you were getting drunk? Oh, yeah. No, but his thing, he was right though. I shouldn't have been showing up doing poor at his job because I have some dream about leaving that job and going off to somewhere else. So he was right. And he's actually still a great friend of mine. He's probably 10 years older than me, so I can still consider him sort of a mentor. Um, but yeah, Leonard, he was a great artist and manager when I was at Quicksilver, and then he went on to do some fantastic display and design work for like Ruka and stuff like that. Um, and Volcom. He's at Volcom for a while. All right, we're an hour and 5. I'm gonna wrap up the questions here. Solar and Magnus were cool too. Yeah, it's too bad Valiant didn't get them back. I think Dynamite has them. Simonin says, or it's also an ego thing, and more artists not used to like having others ink their work. Justin says, later man, take care. Yeah, I see that, Simonin. You meant works. Well, thank you guys for hanging out. I've got to go turn on all the fans now. It is extremely hot inside the house. It's at least 80 some degrees in here right now. So I need to wrap this up and go to Fanville. Try to be nice and cool for the rest of the night. So I will be back on Monday with the comic ship with Global Frequency, and hopefully next Wednesday we'll have an ink along. I have an ink along ready, a piece ready to go, but I haven't been able to do the audio or finish the video for it. So thanks for hanging around. Dark Horse ended up with them. You guys sure about that? Anyways, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and take it easy.